Well, folks, there is a new virus on the loose. Globally, there are now 4,593 confirmed cases of this virus, mostly in China. Only 56 cases have been reported in 14 countries other than China. But now, here in Germany, we have human-to-human transmission of this virus, which is important. We have 3 cases reported to have been spread by a woman working for a German car parts supplier who herself didn't even start showing symptoms until on her flight back to China. Within China, there's 4,537 confirmed cases, 6,973 suspected cases, 976 severe cases, and 106 deaths as of January 28th, 2020, according to World Health Organization situation reports. Well, if you've listened to this show before, you know we have a fondness to talk about diseases, and that's what this episode is about. Let's get into it, and let's talk coronavirus. So for those of you who don't actually know, I did do a PhD degree studying parasites and diseases epidemiology. My co-host Brad also works in this field, so this is where our interest and knowledge in these topics come from. So of all the things we talk about on this show, we actually are probably the most qualified to talk about these. Now, having said that, make sure to check out the website tobradforyou.wordpress.com because I'm going to put up links to all the sources I can. Some of the stuff I've gotten from Twitter and whatnot, so I'll try and give you all the relevant Twitter handles as well. All this information regarding what I'm going to talk about today, because there are many, many great journalists and scientists, obviously, that know way more than me and where I'm getting a lot of my reporting from. Having said that, let's start from the basics. So viruses. Viruses are a really neat type of parasite because, there's always been this long-standing debate as to whether they're actually alive or not. Because really, they don't have the machinery to live on their own. They're not like a cell that can the single cell that has all of the necessary proteins and machinery to replicate itself, provide itself with energy, consume resources in order to produce energy, all of this kind of stuff. They don't. They're just sort of packages of these tiny bits of DNA or RNA that really only have enough sort of machinery to attach onto a cell and then, like a key fits in a lock, unlock that cell and unload the DNA and RNA contents that it has into that cell. So once inside, this DNA, RNA stuff will interact with the cell's machinery, the ribosomes, etc., that read, the cell's own DNA and help produce, all the parts of the cell. It will interact with that machinery of the cell, and instead of replicating the cellular parts, it replicates the virus DNA. And in doing so, this is how a virus reproduces. It hijacks other cells, and it reproduces so much. It takes over the cell, and the cell just begins copying viral DNA, RNA over and over and over and over again. And eventually that kills the cell, and it'll burst, and it'll release more of these viral packages to then go find other cells. So this is how viruses work, and it's pretty sinister. I mean, it's basically like the ultimate parasite. And like I said, they're really, until they find that right cell that they're designed to infect, they're inert. They're just these little bits of DNA. So it's really kind of weird. It's almost like bits of junk DNA that, when they find the right conditions, just snap into action and then take over the cell and use the cell's own parts to replicate itself rather than the cell. So let's talk coronaviruses. Coronaviruses refers to a group of related viruses, and this new one that is causing the outbreak is from this group called the coronaviruses, and these normally infect animals. Bats, I believe, is a common host. So when we were talking about before the machinery that's designed to like seek out, fit onto, and unlock a cell, generally these coronaviruses do that with animal cells. So not every virus can attach to and then infect any cell. However, if they mutate a little bit, or the cells are close enough, so say closely related host species, the cells look close enough to the virus that it can get in, then we can have what we call these jumps, these species jumps. And you may have heard that in reference to this new coronavirus, that it's jumped from animals into humans. So this is caused, again, like I said, by these mutations or something that will then allow it to recognize the human cell and get into it. And viruses actually mutate very quickly. And that's because they replicate quickly. Like inside a cell, they're making thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of themselves over a short period of time. So this means that there's lots of chances for errors to occur in that replication process, and that's your mutations. And then if one of those happens to be beneficial, it's going to spread. And that's the second part of this, is there's this immense selection pressure because put onto the viruses by the host. And that's because you have the immune system trying to stop these things, and any sort of mutation that basically renders the virus unable to infect a cell it's not going to spread. It's just going to die away right away. So there's this really strong pressure that the successful ones, have a lot of space to replicate and reproduce, and the unsuccessful ones just disappear very, very quickly. So the viruses are constantly being honed by natural selection to become more and more infective. And this is the same is true with any parasite, really. And this is why when we talk about antibacterial resistance being such a problem, it's the same thing. The bacteria can reproduce really, really quickly, and they're under immense selection pressure from drugs or the immune system to overcome those challenges. So this jump from from animals to humans, rather, is actually really, really important, because so many of the scary, scary viruses, the pandemic-causing viruses, come from animals. And when they make the jump to humans, they're particularly deadly because our immune system has never seen them before. So when you have a situation where, say in the animals, this virus has been around for thousands and thousands of years, the immune system has learned to cope with it, and this selection process has kind of more or less led to a balancing out. So some of the animals will die, but a lot of them will carry the virus and not die. They've kind of come to this equilibrium, more or less, in the arms race between the virus being able to infect and kill and the immune system being able to keep it under control. However, when it jumps suddenly to a new species like us humans, then our immune system has never seen these things before. So they don't have the antibodies and the necessary components to fight it. So this is why they become so deadly. Think of Ebola, jumped from bats to humans. The other coronaviruses that you may have heard of are SARS and MERS, so Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, both coronaviruses that are believed to have come from bats, then into something else, then into humans. So this animal reservoir of viruses, or diseases as it's referred to, is important because climate change and ecological change in general, so our destruction of natural habitats and stuff, is putting us into contact with animals more and more. And it's only a matter of time before more and more of these viruses pop up into the population. Think about the Australian wildfires that are happening right now. How many animals are being forced to flee forests that are burning and end up in cities, end up in contact with people, and then they could be carrying who knows what viruses. And the more contact there is, the more chances that there are for some mutated variant of an animal virus to find a host in a human and take off. So this is actually a really important part of this story, because as it turns out, it looks like this new coronavirus isn't as deadly as even SARS. SARS had a 10% mortality. This looks to be a 3 to 5% mortality, although, again, it's still early going, so these numbers could change. But it does appear to be very contagious, and so it could spread really quickly. So again, while maybe it's not the most deadly virus we've seen, it's really important to sort of highlight the fact that these things are going to keep happening the more and more we, mess with the environment. So this is the, requisite climate change, ecological change warning that comes along with a story like this. So if we look at the virus itself, what's going on, or rather the outbreak itself, what's going on, there's a couple really interesting things that have come out to me that will also sort of speak to sort of larger issues when it comes to viruses and outbreaks. And the first of this is, what is the source? So you may have heard a lot about this market in the city of Wuhan. Wuhan is the city where it was first sort of diagnosed, this virus. And right away it was believed that there was accounts that there was a live food, seafood market that was the source. And this makes sense, like I said, because of these interactions between animals and humans. A lot of times these live animal markets are the source. However, there was a paper that came out in The Lancet last Friday, so that would be the 24th, I believe. And there's an accompanying science news piece, again, both linked to on our website, that seem to cast doubt on this. So if we look at the report in The Lancet, clinical features of patients infected with 2019 novel coronavirus in Wuhan, China. It was put together by a group of scientists in China. What they found was that by 2nd of January 2020, they had 41 admitted hospital patients. So most of these patients were men. Less than half had underlying diseases, including diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, something like this. So that's, sidebar here, that's an important point, is that a lot of times, when there's a viral outbreak, you see like the old or people who are already sick with other diseases dying, like the weak, basically. They're somehow weakened their immune system. So this is less than half of these people had underlying diseases. And then the median age of these people was 49 years of age. That ranged from 41 to 58. So slightly older population. But here's the really interesting thing, is that 27 of the 41 patients who had been exposed to this market. So that's 66%. Which is, it's over half, but it also means that there's a lot of people, or a significant number of these patients, who had no contact with the market. And in fact, when we look at the Science News report, they report that the earliest case, which I believe was on the 1st of December, had no reported link to the market. So there's evidence now emerging that the market might not be the source. I saw another tweet from last week that said, and again, I'm kind of just going off memory here, so it was something like 20% of cases had a link to the market, 30% had a link to another known infected person, and 50% had no known link. So this is really kind of an important detail, I think, and kind of a, and not to be too morbidly fascinated by this, but a fascinating one, because if you've heard us talk about diseases on this show before, you know that contact tracing is the way in which we deal with outbreaks. So contact tracing being finding out where the virus came from and then identifying all the people who have been there as potential carriers of the virus, and then looking at those people and who they've been in contact with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you really have to have this fan out process, which takes a lot of boots on the ground, so to speak, in terms of finding out who's been in touch with who these links, they say, these epidemiological links. And if the market was one where everyone was focusing, and then it turns out that there is, that's not the place, then we've kind of been going in the wrong direction. And there might be some other source that we need to get a hold of. So it's possible that the virus was brought to the market and then a bunch of people got sick from there, and that it is not the source. Again, from this Science article, they say that this paper in The Lancet also raises questions about the accuracy of the initial information China provided. Again, because it looks like that they might have known that the market wasn't the source and just sort of kind of held on to that, or didn't release that information right away. So that kind of brings us to the next interesting point here, in that how do we respond to these things? And like I said, the contact tracing is the biggest thing. So understanding the source, and then going from there, sort of fanning out and finding all the people who might have had contact with that source, and then the people they have had contact with, et cetera, et cetera. And this comes to the government's response. And I'll link to a podcast that I listened to on our website as well. It's the Pod Save the World podcast, where they talk to a infectious disease, public health specialist in their latest episode, and he gave some really good details about this aspect. And his name is Abdul El Sayed. But anyway, he was focusing on the Chinese response. And you may have heard about how they're building this new hospital super quickly. They've got this new hospital building, and they're going to build it in like 10 days or something like this. And while that's good, I mean, it helps people. It will be able to treat people who are already infected. El Sayed was talking about how this kind of misses the point, because what you really need is primary care centers. So more distributed centers in the community where you can have these contact tracings going on. You kind of have a frontline presence there to work, because when you have hospitals, you have people who they get sick, and if they all just go to the hospital, then you have giant clusters of sick people interacting with non-sick people, family members, health workers and stuff, and it just creates like this sort of breeding ground. So really, he was saying that the focus, rather than like on these big hospitals and treatment places, it should be these sort of primary care places where people can go and say, hey, we have someone who's sick. Where should we go? What should we do? You can kind of get some quick treatment, a quick assessment, maybe get advised to stay in your home, until your condition worsens, and then go to the hospital, or go there and then they'll bring you to the hospital. So you have more of a sort of coordinated flow of cases and not just a mad jam at the hospitals. And then also it's the contact tracing, And so the other thing that we've seen in response from the Chinese government is this massive lockdown, which would just be really, really scary if you're there, just getting, shut down. And I saw some, so the whole city is shut down, transport going in and out. It's sort of not allowed to be on the street right now. If you are on the street, you have to have a mask. And so this could be really, breeds a lot of fear, I'd imagine, among the population. And it also, while it seems like a quick response and, good for them for like trying to lock down the spread, really and this is what, again, El Sayed was saying, is that so you've got these large contained areas, but without, again, the contact tracing and things going on within it, you're just creating a bubble where the virus will be able to spread within that. I mean, people are still going to come in and out of those areas. You won't be able to completely lock it down. And so it might not be as effective as it might seem. And then this comes to trust as well. So living outside of China, we all kind of have, we've all seen the reports and stuff about lack of transparency from the Chinese government, things like this. And there have been some news reports too, Western reporters in China talking about how the state newspapers don't really mention the outbreak at all in the papers. And if we look at the Ebola situation, the current Ebola situation, you see how a lack of trust can really hinder response effort to an outbreak. So if you don't trust your government, and you're then less likely to go to them and say, hey, we have sick people at home, or I think I might be sick, etc., etc. And if the government isn't transparent in telling people what to do, you're kind of just pushing it under the rug. So yes, you've locked it all down, but within those lockdown areas, are the right things happening? Or is it just a matter of, well, let's just, contain the fire and let it burn itself out? I'm not saying that's what's happening, but it raises this question of what's the appropriate response, and having trust in your government and your health system. So in most countries, in Europe, America, Canada, we have really good public health infrastructure. And so you would think it shouldn't be a problem. But this is where I have to mention again, of course, our friends in the anti-vax movement. This again just shows this eroding trust in some of these institutions that, in a situation like this, we absolutely need. And if people are afraid to interact with the health system and they don't trust it, you can really, really exacerbate an outbreak situation. Again, look at Ebola. People not trusting and not wanting to work with the first responders there leads to this breakdown in contact tracing, etc. So thanks again, anti-vax movement. Again, if you've listened to the show, you know how I feel about that. From there, let's talk again about, let's get back to the coronavirus. So it is brand new. It's novel. We've never seen it before. So there is no vaccine. The treatment is, I'm guessing, just, sort of bed rest care. You try and do what you can to keep the person healthy enough to fight off the infection. It is a pulmonary infection, so it causes pneumonia. And now I think it's important to talk about how contagious it is. So this is the ongoing question that we currently don't have a good answer to, although it does now seem like in Germany, because we have these 3 cases of this stemming from a visit from someone from China who then didn't really show symptoms until they were already leaving the country. This shows us that the virus can be transmitted before the person is showing symptoms, and this is problematic, to say the least, because then you have people walking around who don't know they're sick, spreading the virus, and then just further complicating efforts to contain it. And then there's also what they call an incubation period. So how long is that period where you've contracted the virus and it's sort of growing in your cells? How long between when you contract it to when you can start spreading it to when you start showing symptoms? These are questions that still need to be answered. And with that information, you can get a better idea of tracing backwards in time when you have a case. You could say, okay, this person is showing symptoms then, so if we know the incubation period is 2 weeks, let's go back 2 weeks and then trace their steps and try and find all the people that they may have infected. So this is important information that we don't have yet. But like I said, there is clues that it is able to transmit before symptoms are showing. So that's going to affect the spread. And it looks like it's possible that this one could spread all over. The important thing to note, though, before we get too scared, is that the mortality is quite low. In compared to the other big coronavirus, the SARS virus. So SARS had about a 10% mortality. This new one, it's looking to be about 3 to 5%, but it's also it looks to be pretty contagious. So like I said, it could spread everywhere. You're likely not going to die from it, but it could spread far and wide, and then in that case, the more spread, even at 5% mortality, you're going to get more deaths. The other thing that was interesting to me, or that I saw in the news being debated a bit, was this RO number, R naught number. And this is a term that epidemiologists use. It's in their models and their formulas that describes how many people an infected person is likely to infect. So it's just, a way of sort of quantifying the contagiousness of the disease. And again, this one, while pretty contagious, is less contagious than things like measles. So the R naught of this new coronavirus, I think, is somewhere between 2 and 5. But I mean, measles can be something like 10 or 12. So for every person infected with measles, they're likely to infect 10 to 12 others. They can infect 10 to 12 others. So when we're looking at, again, this outbreak, it's important that we're talking about it because it is likely to spread. And, it's not a not serious thing. But again, I think it's the big things that are coming out of it that we could use as a sort of, teaching moment is, the climate and ecological change, trust in our public health services, and, yes, this it's scary and it's in the news, but look at the flu, look at measles, look at all of these other mumps. These are diseases that will spread faster than this new virus, and in terms of the flu, will kill more people, and they're preventable. So again, like if you're looking at if you're scared about coronavirus, what should I do? I mean, wearing a mask in airports and public places, not a bad thing. it's not going to hurt you to do that. But also, I mean, get a flu shot. Just be healthy, get your vaccines, and let's take care of the ones that we can take care of. There's no reason that measles should be having an outbreak in Germany, which is happening right now, and more people are infected with measles than there are coronavirus. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when we're talking about this new outbreak, and we will continue talking about this new outbreak. Believe you me, we will follow it, because like I said, this is right in my wheelhouse. This is the stuff that I enjoy learning about. I find it fascinating, and this is just the quick update for you. So we'll keep on it. As relevant things come up, I'll try and do these little updates as I do episodes with Brad. I'm sure we will talk about it, and let's see what happens. So yeah, like I said, in the meantime, I think there's big issues that we can highlight from this outbreak. It will be interesting to see in the coming days how we find out, if we can find out, number one, the source. Where's the source of this? Because it doesn't appear to be the market. Number two, the incubation period. So how long does it take from infection to then become infectious to others, and then symptoms? And we'll see how the response in China is going. Whether they actually do contain it or not, how forthcoming they are with the numbers. They do appear to be more forthcoming than they were with SARS. But yeah, still a lot of questions to be answered. Very interesting stuff. Like I said, we will have links on the website to all of the sources that I kind of gathered up to now for this little update. I know I've mentioned her name before, but Helen Branswell on Twitter, she's a reporter for Stat Magazine, is sort of my go-to when it comes to infectious disease reporting. And then, like I said, this interview that I listened to with Abdul El-Sayed, public health expert in America. He is also on Twitter at Abdul El-Sayed. So I'll link to those, and there's a number of other good Twitter accounts to follow if you do Twitter and you're interested in this stuff, and I will put all of those up on the website. Okay, that is it. That's our viral update. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more. As always, follow us on Twitter at 2brad4u. I am at bvanparadon. We're also on Instagram, me and the show. So listen, wherever you're listening to us, give us a comment, give us a rating. It really does help. Give us a like on our posts, share them. That also helps. And if you have any questions or concerns, topics, whatever that you want to know more about concerning this virus, tweet at me, tweet at the show, whatever, Instagram, message me or the show, so that I can address them in the next little updates. There we go. Thank you for listening. Thanks as always to the Freak Motif for the music, and we'll catch you next time. Bye now.